Hello everyone, in this video, we're going to introduce Module 4, Cultural Transition. So let's start from the contextualization of this module. As we all know that the intercultural transition is a long-term process, which is similar to all other transition process in our lives. For example, starting a new job, moving to a new place to live, or studying at the university. Every year, we send out thousands of Chinese students overseas for further studies. So coping with the cultural differences is challenging and will influence the students' academic performance as well. So we should equip the learners with the intercultural adaptation strategies and approaches. In this module, we're going to present the students with 3 approaches. One is the social science models of adaptation, the interpretive approaches, and finally the critical approach, which covers the social institutions and histories, politics, and economic factors. So the central idea of this module is, first, we're going to present to students the possible intercultural encounters. And then we would like to invite the students to appraise their pre-departure expectations. And we also will prepare the students with intercultural transition approaches. Finally, we're going to apply the intercultural transition approaches to solve the possible questions during the intercultural transition through experiential learning. So here are the 4 topics, 4 activities. The topics are from the ideal to the real world. The next is the high and lows of the cultural transition. The next one is adjusting to intercultural differences. And finally, the universality and diversity. So next, I'm going to introduce the theoretical underpinning of this module. The theories that we're going to mention includes the intercultural competence, the social constructionism, and then we are also going to introduce some key concepts like the cultural adaptation and the intercultural transition, intercultural encounters. Actually, these terms, glossaries, or the theories are also quite important in the pedagogical framework. So you can refer to the Prue's video or refer to the pedagogical framework documents to have a good understanding of these terms. So next one is the objectives and outcomes of this module. We're going to start from the reflection of similarities and differences between one's own country or culture and the host culture and country during the intercultural transitions. So next one is we're going to equip the learners with the social science approach and the interpretive science approach and the contextual influences approach to the learners, so as to help them to have more strategies to adapt to the new culture. Okay. So next, we're going to start from the first activity, from the ideal to the real world. So as you can see from the overhead, there are 4 tasks in this activity, and then we're going to finish these 4 tasks in 45 minutes. And I think you can adjust to your own schedule. For example, a little bit more or less will be fine. And then the first task is the first days at university. This is kind of warm-up activity to lead in the students the context for the cultural transition. And also another point that I think we need to mention to the students is that cultural transition not only refer to when people travel from one country to the other country, but also it also happens in our daily life. Like if you are from Hunan province and then you come to Heilongjiang or Jilin province, and then there's also the cultural differences. We also need the strategies to adapt to the new culture. And the second task is why Chinese students don't party. This is a video from YouTube. It's a kind of discussion of a scenario produced by the 2 Chinese students and several American students, that they discuss that it is quite common that we Chinese students don't want to go to the parties, and then we need to think about it, whether go to the party can be a sign that you adapt to the new culture or not. The next one, task 1.3, is we're going to, after the 2 warm-up activities, we're going to introduce the key concepts in this module. And then finally, task 1.4 is we provide answers, which is the latter part of the video, that why Chinese don't party. We listen to the different voices from the speakers, and then also this kind of can invoke the reflection from the students. Okay. So the first task, the first day at university. So this is, as I have just mentioned, this is kind of warm-up activities. So it might take 10 minutes or so. I think it really varies from different institutions. Like in my, from my pilot studies, that my students really had a very heated discussion about their first day at university. And then they have talked about something unexpected that they have experienced in their first day at the university. But to other universities, for example, like if the students are quite familiar with this university, they do not have very much to discuss in this activity. So here is the order that I think we can start the discussion is that students can bring the photos that they shot at the university when they just arrived at the university, and then they can recall their first day at the university and think about what is the first day impression at the campus, and compare with their first day expression. Is there any difference from their expectation of the university life? And then in the handout and in the teaching material, you can also find out there is a table for students to fill in. That is, ask the students to write a journal of your discussion, like what is the expectation, what is the first impression of the university, what kind of difficulty they have met in the first day to the university, and how they overcome the difficulty. Then in the second task of this activity, we're going to watch a video that why Chinese students don't party. But we're going to just to show the previous part, about 4 minutes of this video.
There's a huge party tonight, so you better get your ass ready because we're leaving soon.
Come on, get ready. There's free drinks for girls at Whiskey River tonight.
Say, don't tell me you're not going again.
Yeah, don't be a buzzkill.
I don't know. Last time the party was just okay. I don't really know what to do there. I guess I have to think about it. Why doesn't Faye want to go?
I don't know. Maybe she's just really shy. Whatever.
So we have recreated this typical.
So after watching this clip of video, and then we're going to discuss with the students the following questions, like what do you think are the reasons that the Chinese girl hesitated to go to the party? And then also from the other perspective is how the American students react to the Chinese girls' declination. What do you think of their guess? And then finally, we invite the students to put themselves in the shoes of the Chinese girl and think about whether they would like to go to the parties with the locals and give their reasons. While I was piloting this testing material, my students had really a very heated discussion on whether to go to the party or not. So this discussion is actually paved the way for their understanding of the cultural adaptation, whether they would like to involved in the local culture. And then actually this is also a good opportunity for the students to realize the differences in cultures. Okay. After the warming up activities, and then we're going to introduce the key concepts like the intercultural transition. So I think it's quite easy for the students to understand these concepts, the intercultural transition and also the interpretivism. Maybe the students could find it a bit unfamiliar with this interpretivism, and I think teachers can invite the students to refer to this intercultural development continuum to understand there might be several stages that we get adapted to the new culture. Okay. After the brief introduction of the terms, we're going to move to the next part of the video. The two Chinese students actually provide answers that why they don't want to party. And also we can invite the students to discuss, because actually this clip of video can invite the students to compare and analyze the strengths and the weakness of going to the party when studying abroad. And then this video can also provide the students the possible intercultural encounters when studying abroad and raise their awareness of the intercultural adaptation.
Chinese student, incoming Chinese student is invited to a party, but she's not willing to go because of many reasons there might be. So what kind of reasons might be there that, a Chinese student won't want to go to a party?
So I don't know about everybody else, but at least for me, my freshman year, I absolutely had no idea of like how things work here. I don't know the point of going to a party. I don't know much about it, and I don't really know like what people actually do there. So if I go there, I just be like, I don't know what to do, and I don't see the point. And also, I kind of want to study a lot, so
yeah. So it's very typical that we either need to go to the library or just don't know what to do.
Yeah, like in high school, like studying is like the most important thing for Asian students. So I'm here, I'm still like, oh, I only see the point of studying, but I don't see the point of partying. So why do I just go to the library instead of partying?
Right. So I think there are some benefits with partying. For example, I think like you tend to be very intense, very nervous about studies, but after you experience some parties, you loosen up yourself and know how to make friends in a more relaxed situation, right?
I started to party for the first time my sophomore year, which is kind of late compared to average American. However, I started to know like it's not a bad thing as I would have imagined, because I would think of people just like drinking and then they get too drunk and they would do crazy stuff. It's just a way of relaxing yourself. So like when I get myself out there more, I start to understand how American culture works. I start to know more about here, so I start to actually enjoy the life here, which I think is really important.
Yeah, there's just one thing that I didn't like is that when I turn down parties, I feel like people see me as an introvert or just shy, but I don't think not going to parties is necessarily a sign of shyness. I think we are treated like this alien person that doesn't know how to have fun, but I mean, this thing divides us somehow, right?
Right. I actually knew a Thai girl who just like came here as an exchange student for a year. And then she's really sociable, really outgoing, and she makes lots of friends from class projects and those kind of things. But then, so I would picture her as a party goer. However, when I one day asked her to go out with me, she's like, no, she doesn't really party. So it doesn't mean she's introverted at all.
Right, exactly. So how should we handle this?
So I think you should at least hold a really positive attitude and then be really open. You should be really willing to try new things, because that's the best way of quickly get involved on campus and get to know the American culture. And then at first it's hard. You can just communicate, just being open about why the reasons you don't want to go. And then actually lots of the locals here are really friendly. They would be like, oh, then you can just come out with us and then see what it's like and see if you like it. So just if there's such a chance, just go for it.
party responsibly is the #1 rule. It's not, party is about connecting people. It's not like we have to damage or crazy. Don't go too far.
Yeah, party responsibly for sure.
Okay.
And at the same time, open your eyes and see what's going on. Try to learn something from it.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for watching.
Okay, and then let's move to activity 2, the highs and lows of a cultural transition. So in this activity, we will take about 15 minutes. In the first task, we're going to give an overall introduction of the 3 approaches of intercultural adaptation, namely the social science approach, interpretive approach, and critical approach. Although these 3 approaches will provide cultural adaptation strategies, they look at the cultural adaptation from different perspectives. So the interpretive approach focuses on the experience of the migrant in the adaptation context, while the social science approach emphasizes the role of personal characteristics of migrants. And the critical approach explores the roles of larger contexts that influence the cultural adaptation. So, for example, like the social institutions and history, politics, and economic structures. So, we'll just give a very brief introduction of these 3 approaches, because if we want to give a deep understanding of these 3 approaches, it will take a lot of time. And then we just present these examples to illustrate how do we adapt to the intercultural adaptation with these approaches. Right, and in the second task and the third task, the U-curve and the W-curve, we're going to introduce these 2 curves as the 2 examples of the interpretive approach of intercultural transition. So students can understand the 2 curves very easily by observing the 2 diagrams. So we designed the worksheet for application of the U-curve. Students can read the 4 paragraphs, these 4 paragraphs of the overseas students' life experience, and give the correct order of the paragraphs with reference to the U-curve. Okay, after the application of the U-curve, we can present students a more complicated model for cultural transition, which is the W-curve. So we chose an article which is called Culture Shock and the First Year Experience, which is quite related to the college students' life. So students can find similar experience in their college life, and we can invite the students to draw their own curves of cultural adaptation, no matter it is a U-curve or a W-curve. And the homework for this activity is to watch the film Outsourced. And the purpose of this homework is still to raise the intercultural awareness. This film presents abundant examples of intercultural encounters. Although the intercultural adaptation process in this film is quite dramatic, we can still provoke students' thought of how to better adapt to the new culture. Okay, for activity 3, adjusting to intercultural differences, we're going to introduce the social science approach and then have the students to apply these theories to practice. I'm afraid I have to say that these 2 tasks are really heavy loaded. But we can tailor these materials and then try to fit into our classroom. So for the first task, social science approach, we'll introduce several models to face the intercultural encounters. And then for this task, students will be split into groups. Each group will choose one of the model. And for example, like one group will choose the AUM model, and then the other group is going to choose the transition model. And another one to introduce the integrative model. And then they're required to draw a mind map to present to the whole class. So this is a kind of self-study or group study. And the students are encouraged to add their personal understanding of the models. But if time is limited, we can also ask students to read materials before the class. Okay. And then for task 3.2 is why are Chinese students often in a group? For this task, is going to introduce a common phenomenon of the overseas Chinese students. Some Chinese students often in a group instead of to adapt to the local community. So we choose this question and answers from Coral.com because this can provide us with authentic teaching materials. And then the attachment presents 3 answers to these questions. So we recommend students to do group work, and each group choose 1 answer. And we also prepared a worksheet. Okay, here is a table for the student to fill in. So by reading the answers, the students could look for the identity, the life experience, and then filling in this in the biography column. And then the core users' attitudes towards the topic, why are Chinese often in a group? And then students, there's also a column for the students to discuss their opinions towards this question. So the purpose of this question is to invite the students to give their justifications by applying the models, have the students to reflect what is their attitude, what will they choose to do, whether they would like to stay in the Chinese community or they would like to involve in the local community. Okay, so the last column, your group's opinion towards his or her attitude. This is to make a comparison between the students' attitudes towards the core users' attitudes. So for the students to reflect upon the theories we just learned, models we have just learned. Okay, this is the group presentation. And then here's a homework. The homework is to watch the film Iron and Silk. Actually, this is a pretty old film, which was released in the 1991, I think. And then this story, if you have any idea about this story, is actually it depicts an American's journey in China after graduation from university. So the reason that we chose this film is because this film, although it was pretty old, it prompts the lively discussion about culture shock and cultural relativism, which paved the way for the next activity, because there will be a lot of discussion about the cultural background, the histories, and the politics in the 1990s in China. So to prepare for the next activity, so students can answer these fact questions like why is Mark in Changsha, and then who hired him, when does Mark arrive, and then when did he leave, what is his reaction to the characters in this film, and then some terminologies may be mentioned in this film. Okay, so these are just the basic questions, and then for students to catch the facts from this film. Okay, for the last activity, universality and diversity, we're going to introduce the critical approach, the third approach that's in this module. And then, as we all know, it covers various contextual influences. And as we have required students to watch the film Iron and Silk, and students can get very rich information regarding the contextual influences. So we can have the students to discuss or give the examples of the contextual influence that they have observed from this film. And but we cannot just stay on the very shallow level. So for the first task, we can introduce the very abstract concepts, like we can introduce the institutional influence, or political influence, class influence, or religious influence of context to the intercultural adaptation. We can give some examples to explain this influence. For example, like here is one like that's listed here. The schools can help the immigrants children to adapt to the new culture by offering the language classes to bring them up to the speed. So school are the institutions, and then the positive role that the school can play is that many schools they cut their bilingual programs as part of the English only movement, and then the result will be that the students are actually the immigrants actually they are deprived of the opportunity to their own culture, to study their own culture. Okay. So we can explore more about the different kind of influence in depth, not only stay on the example or the knowledge level. And then for the second task is that we can still use the media of the film Iron and Silk and reflect upon the contextual influences. Like we can still have the students to do the group work to discuss the following questions, like what is the moral of the Buddhist story about the horse? Why was mark considered cultural pollution? What are Pan's physical weakness, and how does the African survive in China? And but students will notice there might be a lot of more examples of the contextual influence in the film. So we can have the students to explain how do they interpret this influence during the cultural adaptation. Okay, that's all about activity 4. And then the last part will be the assessment, self-assessment after the learning the whole module. And the students, we can check the students if they have reached their learning outcome or not.